Oh, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think that covers all the bases. It's so lovely to see you all on this spooky edition of the network. What we try and do, Melanie and I, is to bring speakers that really have aspects of the our house healing kind of practice, so that we get to hear from other people and we can deepen and steepen our experience and our knowledge. And today is dedicated to all things spooky, given that we look at spirits as part of our house healing checklist. And so Melanie and I have a little experience around the identification and movement of spirits that we want to share with you. And we're going to start it up. And so messenger. So Melanie's going to go first, and then you're going to hear from me. So I'm going to hand it over to Mel.
I'm not sure this is going to work, but I'll try. Hang on. This is not my computer. My computer's bit the dust. So, oh, here
While
we are.
you're doing that, we want questions at any point. You can pop them in the chat. I'll monitor the chat while Melanie uh, um, presenting, and then vice versa. Or you can just shout them out. We want this to be more of a discussion than kind of a static presentation.
Definitely. See if this will work. Is this working? Is it showing anything? Um, can you see anything yet, Dor? You can't, can you?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes,
I can see it. Yeah.
see it. You just need to put it on
Can
press. Yep.
see that. Oh, good, good. Because I turned it off earlier on. It wiped everything, so I'm just terrified on this computer. Okay, so I live in Southern Ireland, as some of you will know, but I used to live in England. I used to live in Kent. That's where I grew up. Um, I have seen spirits since I was a kid, and I just didn't know I was seeing spirits. I just thought they were other people. And so, what I'm going to do is talk about one of my earliest memories of spirits, because that was something that quite unusual. I had a lovely uncle. I'm adopted by an Irish family, and I grew up in a massive family. My mother was one of nine, my father was one of five, so there were vast families. And I was always the odd kid because I wasn't like anybody else being adopted. And I had one uncle who was just lovely. He was my happy, fun uncle. You probably all had one of those. His name was Uncle Jack. And he always had time for me, always played with me, he was always treated me like everybody else. He was lovely. I was about six, and we had to go to this place, which I didn't understand at 6 years old, but it looked a bit like this. I was trying to find something that looked vaguely like this. And everyone was really somber, and I couldn't figure out why. Everyone was really sad. And a 6 year old, they don't tell you it's a funeral. And so I'm there and I'm wondering why everyone's kind of crying and upset. And there's one over on the other side of the room, like that picture is, there was a man standing there. It was my uncle. And I waved and he waved back. And he came over and sat next to me and he was laughing and joking and really happy. And I thought, excellent, someone's not sad. And so he sat next to me and he was making me giggle all the way through without understanding that I wasn't supposed to be giggling. And at one point, the priest said, "Oh, we all loved John." And he looked at me and said, "No one's ever called me John. My name's Jack. Don't even know that man. Never met him in my life." So he was just laughing at how stupid and ironic it was. And then there was a little conveyor belt where the actual coffin was being very slowly moved along to go through these little doors, like little kind of curtains, like you see in the picture here. It got stuck halfway through. It just stopped dead. And everyone's kind of embarrassed silence. And suddenly this little man popped up with a little kind of jacket on and gave it a shove. And of course, my uncle was in hysterics on the floor because he thought it was the funniest thing ever. At no point did I realise this was his funeral, but he seemed to be thoroughly enjoying it nonetheless. So he was laughing, I was getting thumped by my mother in the days when you could thump kids, and I was being told I was showing off and shut up and be quiet. And I was usually a really quiet, shy kid, so that was very unusual for me. But in the end, I said to him, "Why is everyone so sad?" And I said, "Why is Auntie Ella sad?" She was my aunt, his wife. And so he whispered something in my ear and he said, "Go and tell Auntie Ella and tell her that from me." So I went over when everyone was saying goodbye and I whispered in her ear and she burst into tears and it was hysterics. Apparently, whatever I'd whispered was very, very personal and extremely adult. I to this day do not know what I said. It was the happiest I've ever met at a funeral. Just people do
You're bugging out there.
something.
You're coming in and out.
It goes activity. So this when I grew up, we grew up in one house, and my father bought a really old house across the way. Can you hear me still, Dawn?
Yeah, you were bugging out for a bit and then you came back in.
That's really strange. Okay, this is usually spring activity when this happens. You're probably aware of this. Um, my father was a carpenter, and he bought a really old house that was empty, and was supposedly very spooky old house. The old lady who'd lived there had been a piano teacher, and she lived in one room, which ended up being my bedroom many, many years later. And all there was jam jars everywhere, empty jam jars. Apparently, she lived on jam sandwiches and played the piano. But she used to teach the piano kind of locally to people. And because I was extremely strange, my father was a Scorpio, and they're very known to be extremely intuitive. But he was also born on IHHN, which Chris will know is Halloween in Ireland, don't you?
Mhm.
It's Samhain is actually the month of November in Irish, but Ina is actually the day of Halloween. And my father was born on Halloween, and everybody teased him he was a witch, which he used to hate because he was very, very Catholic. And so but he knew that I could see them and he could sense them, but was terrified of anything like that, always has been. So he joked he used to use me as a canary in the coal mine, and he'd take me over there after work and he'd do a little bit of work on this old house he was doing up. And the minute I smelt the lavender water, I don't know if people remember the old fashioned lavender water. It used to be very, very, very old fashioned, but it used to be so strong it would catch in the back of my throat. And I used to be able to see and hear and taste and all sorts of things when I was a kid, but not now. And so I'd feel this, and then I'd suddenly know that she was in the room. And the minute I said to him, "I think she's here," my dad would just drop his tools and run. It was quite amusing. He couldn't be in the house when she was there. And he was this great big guy. He was enormous, like a bear of a man. But the minute there was a hint of anything spooky, he would leave. And to hear the piano music occasionally as well. You'd hear this music, and there was no music anywhere. So that was rather strange. But the woman was extremely there still, and we got the place fixed up eventually. And even afterwards, they were having lots and lots of trouble in the house. And next door, it was like a semi-detached house. And next door, there was a priest, the vicar. And so my father asked him to come in and bless the house, which I was fascinated by. Didn't get rid of her at all. She never left an inch. She was still there watching what was going on the whole time. So that was curious because I thought, oh, well, that'll be the end of her. But she didn't. She stayed on. And years later, I moved into her bedroom, and I had an argument with her. And in the end, she threw a pair of scissors at me. I remember that. I don't know. I must have been half asleep, but these scissors stuck in my mother's winter coat, which was like the spare room at the time. But we never saw her after that. But I remember describing her to my dad and my mother because I was so insistent that she was still there. And then years later, they found in the attic all the photographs of her from years ago. And she was just like that, not exactly like this picture, but she was as we described. So she was still around, and I didn't see her after that, but I do wonder what happened to her because she was most upset everyone was in our house. So that was a lady that was just refusing to move on. And then another one that I was thinking about the other day, although I was adopted, my mother's mother was lovely. She used to treat me just like anybody else, just like Jack. She had 9 children, one of which she was pregnant with when her husband died during the war. So you can imagine how hard that was for her. But she was this amazing woman who used to literally mother everyone and everything in sight. And we used to live opposite to her, maybe kind of 500 yards across the road. And every single morning, I'd walk my little brother to school, which was just up the road, and she would sit in these bay windows and she'd wave. Every morning, she'd wave to us both to make sure we were okay as we went past. It was a little ritual we did every morning. Then one night, I was fast asleep and I heard her wake me up really clearly. She was calling me. And I got out of bed and I pulled my curtains, and she seemed to be just across the road, which she wasn't physically, but she was as if she was standing across the road in a house, looking through the same bay windows. And she said to me, I'm not going to be waving at you tomorrow because I've got to go somewhere, but I want you to know that I'll be keeping an eye on you both. And please look after your mother because she's going to be very sad tomorrow. And I thought, oh, okay. Trundled back to bed and thought no more of it. And then in the morning, my dad came in very upset and said, your mum's not to be disturbed. And I said, oh, is that because of grandma? And he was furious at me. But she'd literally come to say goodbye, which I thought was beautiful. And when my mother died about maybe 15 years ago, I was at her funeral, obviously. And my cousin, Andrew, who was 4 years older than me, he used to live, his bedroom was above grandma's bedroom. And he said that the day she died, he came to see her too. He actually saw her. She was sitting in a rocking chair and woke him up as well and told him exactly the same as she told me. But he said he never told anyone because he didn't want to be bonkers like me, which was a great compliment. But he said he'd always been meaning to tell me he'd seen her as well, but he was too frightened to say anything when he was a kid because everyone used to think I was so odd. So, but it's lovely to know that even when someone passes on, they can actually come back and say goodbye. And that, I swear she still keeps an eye. She was a lovely lady. She was pure love.
Tabitha says, how lovely, Melanie.
Yeah. Am I still drifting in and out, Dawn?
No, no, you're fine. I was just letting you know what Tabitha had said in the messages.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so when my first ever house, this isn't my house, this is the nearest I could find to looking like my house. I must have been 19. I'd just come out of agricultural college. I had nowhere to live. And I found this flat. And I lived in Kent on the edges of London. And it was my very first home. I think rented. I rented it for over 20 years. And it was amazingly cheap. And I remember asking the lady why it was so cheap. It was £10 a week rent. Even in the 70s, that was cheap. And when I left 20 years later, it was only 50. It's not bad, is it? Because nobody else would live there. It was really, really haunted. She explained to me that there was a ghost and that's why nobody would stay there. And I thought, well, I don't mind. I don't mind ghosts. So I moved into this little terraced house. I had the first, well, the lady downstairs had the two basement rooms. Mary, she was a lovely old lady. And I had the three upper levels. And this is the nearest I could get to a picture of what it would look like. Slightly different. But it was all levels and stairways and very old, very high ceilings like this. And I remember walking in and thinking, I can feel something, but I don't know what it is exactly. And it wasn't, and for a while, until I realised that the two things that struck me was it was always on the stairs. Whatever the feeling was always on these stairs. You'd come in the front door, there'd be a kind of living room to one side, and you'd go up this little tiny hallway and up a few steps, then you go to the next level, which was kitchen and bathroom and things. Then you got the really tall steps, and that would be the two bedrooms. Now, what really freaked me out was the attic kind of hatchway. And I know a lot of people don't like going underneath this, but this one felt horrible, really horrible. You couldn't walk past it without shivering. And but the hallway had a different feel to the hatchway. I can't really describe it. It took me a while to work out. And it always seemed really busy, as if there were lots of people moving around. And so that was a curious place to live. Then we found out who was on the stairs. This is Gladys, as near as I can get to Gladys with photographs. My father only came to my house once in the whole 20 years I lived there. He walked in the door, got as far as the short hallway, saw someone standing above him in a maid's uniform, in a Victorian maid's uniform, took one look, turned around and walked out, and he never came back to my house ever again. Terrified, I say, really, really frightened of ghosts. And very psychic, which was just so sad. But Gladys used to like to appear to people. And it was always men, never women. I never saw her. I felt her. It was like somebody was standing behind you when you know, somebody's watching you. I could feel her when she was in the room. I couldn't see her. Um, all my friends saw her, my brother, everyone saw her. Every male saw her. She never appeared to a woman. I don't know why. But she seemed to be in that hallway. She didn't seem to move anywhere else other than this big long hallway. And I thought that was curious. My husband, Wolf, said when we were friends, long before we got together, he was washing up in my kitchen one day and he said he thought I was standing in the doorway. And he turned around to find her standing there like this. This is how he describes her. And she was just watching him. And I think she was really shocked as a Victorian woman to see a man washing up, to be honest. But maybe that's just me. She wasn't used to seeing that. But she seemed very curious. She'd watch people, she'd follow people around. My friend Ivan was frighteningly psychic and again terrified. He was Jehovah's Witness. Bless him. And she appeared to him quite a few times to the point where he refused to come to my house, which was a great shame. He was a fascinating guy. And she never did anybody any harm. Never did anybody any harm. She was just really, really curious. Then when my son was 2, when they stopped toddling and talking, I would find him at the bottom of the stairs. I used to put stair guards up so he could have a little bit more room to run around in the kitchen. And he'd be out there sitting at the bottom of the steps, the big long steps, and I'd hear him whisper, "Hello, Shadow. Hello, Shadow." He'd call her Shadow all the time. And he'd be like chatting away to Shadow. And I said to him, "Who are you talking to?" And he went, "Shadow Lady, Shadow Lady." So he could see her too. And when he was, he used to talk to her all the time, he used to play with her all the time. He never used to have any problem with her. She wasn't frightening to him at all. And then when he was 12, we moved to Ireland and we were packing the van. I remember that so clearly. We were packing the van, putting his last toys in them. And he looked at me and said, "We haven't taken Gladys." I said, "You can't take Gladys, darling." I said, "I've asked her. She doesn't want to come." I kept saying, "Do you want to move on? Do you want to move on?" She didn't want to move. She was quite happy. And he burst into tears and we had to take a very, very upset 12-year-old all the way to Ireland because we'd left his ghost behind, which I thought was very sweet. And he's 40 now and still remembers her really clearly. I was talking to him in the other night about her. Um, he said she was never frightening. She was always really caring, which was lovely. And my dog used to wag her tail every time she went into the hallway as if she was saying hello to someone. So we now looking back as a house healer, I think she was the spirit of the house. And I think she was there to protect the house because there was something else there that was not nice at all. And that was definitely not friendly and definitely not pleasant. So I wonder that's one of the reasons why she was still there. The other thing was the upstairs landing. Now, sorry about the picture, but that's the most subtle picture I could find. It was as if somebody was in the attic looking down. It was the most horrific feeling. And it was as if when you walked through it, as if you were walking through something, like something dangling from above. So I'm sure I don't have to elaborate any more than that. But it was only that top landing that used to have that feeling, and it was really horrible, as you can see by the pictures. Then I had this dream. I had a really, really powerful dream. You know, when you have powerful dreams, that they stay with you. I woke up in the middle of the night and I dreamt that I was walking up the stairs and I'd gone up to the top landing. And before I'd got to the top landing, I was halfway up the long stairs and I heard something creak, 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 as if something was swinging above my head. When I looked up, it was a corpse just twirling. Now, I worked as a conservation ranger in a forest for many years. I have found people hanging, physically found people hanging. I found people with their brains blown out with guns, all sorts of things. So I'm not squeamish even, but this put the fear of God in me. This was horrible, this thing. And it was just spinning and spinning very, very slowly. And it suddenly came around and you could see this guy's face, contorted face. And I was just not sure what to do. And suddenly he said, "You know you'll never get rid of me, don't you?" And I was thinking, "Oh God, okay." And I woke up in a cold sweat, absolutely terrified. And I thought, my God, am I just imagining this? But this thing was so visceral. Even my husband will tell you it was nobody liked walking under that hatchway. And I couldn't find out who or what. I tried finding out who it was. But this thing was so horrible. Then I got pregnant. That was fun. I got pregnant with my son, and all hell broke loose. Now, this isn't quite as elaborate as the picture shows. It's a bit hard to find something, but things started flying around, literally. All sorts of odd things would fly off shelves as I walked past. All sorts of things would drop from bookshelves. Really, really strange PK activity wherever I went. Even when I went to my friend's house, who was an occultist, luckily, and her books would start falling off the shelf, and she'd say, "Oh, you're pregnant, are you?" I thought, "Okay, I'm pregnant. That's obviously what happens when you're pregnant." But this happened an awful lot. But it wasn't the only thing that happened. Lots of strange things started to happen in the house, and I suddenly thought, and the feeling at the top of that stairs got stronger and stronger and stronger. It was very malevolent. That's the word I'm looking for. It didn't feel pleasant. It didn't feel nice. It felt not evil, but certainly not friendly. And as I got more pregnant I became, I thought, there's no way I'm going to have a baby in this house without there. So I decided to do something about it. Now, most of you will have come from a healing modalities. I don't. I come from a magical background. I was trained in high magic and also in folk magic. So that's my background. And so I decided to do a ritual. And I thought, okay, the simplest, calmest thing I could do being pregnant was a candle ritual. So I know some of you will have done this kind of thing. I'm sure Blossom would understand what I'm talking about as well. And so I had this book by Leo Vinci, which had this wonderful, simple candle ritual. And what he did was he put a candle representing every single person in your family that you wanted to protect. And you'd have their astrological symbol. I even had one for the baby that wasn't born yet because I knew when he was due. And I had one for the dog. I wasn't taking any chances with anyone. And so I had a candle in the right colour, in the right astrological symbol for each of them, and put them in the middle of the actual ritual, a circle. And this was on a table, not me sitting there like that one. It was a very small table, sadly. And I had all the candles, and the white candles were on the outside of the ring, and the black candles were surrounding the people in the middle. So they showed the kind of negativity, and the white candles were obviously the positivity. I'm not sure if any of you have ever come across planetary hours, but you have an hour in each day that's ruled by a different planet. So the first hour on a Sunday morning would be ruled by the sun. If it was a Monday, the first hour in the morning would be the moon. So it works out during the day. So you need to calculate it every time. It's not something that's set in stone. And so I'd worked out the planetary hours, and you had to do it at a particular time. Sometimes that was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, sometimes that was 3 o'clock in the morning, which wasn't always as easy. But it was a 9-day ritual, and I was determined that by the time the white candles surrounded the people and the black candles were out, whatever it was would be banished. That was my theory. Lovely theory. And I did this religiously for 7 whole days. Then my husband went bananas at me. He was fast asleep. He wasn't actually my husband, he was my partner at the time, but he was fast asleep in bed next to me, and I'm tiptoeing around at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying desperately to move the candles without making a noise, when suddenly he erupted, literally like this. It's the nearest I could find to his expression, and he was pretty violent anyway, but this was not him. This was definitely not him. And he started screaming and shouting and being really angry. Then he knocked all my candles off the table, setting fire to just about everything in the room, curtains, carpets, everything, and said, "I told you, you're never going to get rid of me." And then went back to bed. Boom, completely. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm in the middle of this kind of devastation in our bedroom and trying to put the curtains and the carpet out, and there's wax everywhere, and I'm really shaken up. And in the morning, he wakes up and said, "What the hell have you been doing?" I thought, no, you did this. You did this at 3 o'clock in the morning. He has no memory whatsoever what happened. So I think it's the nearest I've ever seen to possession, because this thing was really not nice. So I did get rid of it in the end. I just thought that would make you smile at the end, guys. But I did get rid of it, but I think I sent it sideways. I honestly feel I was in my 20s. I think I was early 20s. I'm pretty sure what I did was sent it to the house next door. There were flats beside me, because it stopped in our house. It really did stop. There was like a scar, like a psychic scar afterwards, even when you walked underneath it. But my husband and I were talking about it last night. He said it still made him feel ill walking underneath it. But it wasn't in our house anymore. But next door erupted as well. So in my ignorance and my very, very young, unlearned self, I think I sent it sideways. So it taught me an awful lot about how to deal with spirits, because people say, oh, they won't do any harm. Most of the time they don't. Some of them do. And that one had the most amazing ability to control people's emotions. To this day, I don't know what it was or who it was. I would love to know. But I did realise where I got my rent cheap, at least. I suppose that's one good thing. But so many people saw Gladys, and I swear Gladys was there to balance this guy or whatever entity it was. It was human, but not a very pleasant human. So I will stop sharing now because, second, no, mouse isn't working. Anyone got any questions? I cannot share this. There we go.
No, Tabitha at OMG was.
Oh, sorry, that's okay. Sorry, but my first experience of trying to get rid of something, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I was so unaware of ghosts. I knew what they were. Hello, Tabitha. Hey, Tabitha. I was aware of ghosts, but I'd never really, other than like yourself, I went to a spiritualist church and was put in the kind of had to train with mediums, but I was very young and I had no really idea what I was doing. And I always thought how terrible it must have been to send that somewhere else. I've never forgiven myself for that. But hopefully he got bored and left eventually.
Well, hope you a little sleep tonight after some of those.
Sorry. Yeah, that was. But Gladys was lovely. Gladys was really lovely. We all miss Gladys. My son still misses her.
And did she tell you her name?
Oh no, we doused it.
Okay.
We doused it letter by letter.
Nice.
And we got Gladys really, really clear. And the old lady downstairs said that she felt somebody occasionally. She was half deaf and half blind, so she wasn't quite sure what she was seeing half the time. She used to joke. But the house used to be one big house. And because houses don't like to be fragmented, do they? So, they get very upset if they're not explained to before you fragment them. That I think she used to have the whole run of the place, but I don't think poor Mary used to see very much at all.
You'll have to do on Uncanny and get them to investigate the history of the house.
Yes, good idea. Hello, Joe. Joe's here as well. Nice to see Joe.
Okay, so I got some slides. Hopefully, it's really cool because Melanie and I didn't share notes on what we were going to talk about. So it's interesting how we've kind of both taken a different approach. So really, I thought I would share a few things on my journey as a paranormal and spirit rescue medium. And I've been doing that for 30 years. So unlike Melanie, I don't have any memories of a child of having any abilities. I mean, my siblings tell me I was weird, but I have no memories of that. I know I had a very intense fear of the dark, but I really don't remember any, talking to even invisible friends. So my journey started, as I say, about 30 years ago when I was awoken by spirit, awoken psychically, spiritually, but also literally, shook out of bed. And it was a very visceral, scary event, and left me kind of a little bit at sea in terms of, well, what do I, how do I move forwards with this? And so I ended up at the spiritualist church. This was actually the spiritualist church that I went to. It is in Southport, and they have, well, I don't know if you know about spiritualist churches, but really the whole reason for being is to prove that life goes on after physical death. And so it's a Christian-esque type of organization. They have services where instead of a priest, there's a medium who will kind of deliver messages at the end. But they also have development circles, and they have an open circle that you could just, it was a drop-in, you could just attend each week and learn a little bit about mediumship and how to do it. And I sat in the development circle for about a year there. Open circles are really interesting because they're dynamic in that you get like different people showing up each week, and so the energy is a little bit chaotic. In closed circles, you can do a lot more, but in an open circle, you just got all sorts of different people. So we would sit and we would meditate, we bring through people, and then we do some different activities. But it was when we started to being be asked to stand up and perform, and kind of stand on the platform. It's called platform mediumship, and bring through spirit. I realized that that was not what I wanted to do with whatever abilities were growing in me. I did not want to be a platform medium. I didn't want to be a medium that brought through your dead auntie. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew what I didn't want to do that. And it was at that time that I got invited into a couple of closed circles. And closed circles are really good because you got to have the same group of people consistently sitting at the same time each week, and you develop a trust together, an energy together, but also, kind of a connection to spirit as well. And those development circles really helped me to understand my abilities, but also focus them. So the three circles I sat in, one was kind of a general mediumship circle, but we would do house calls. So we would go out to people who were having paranormal experiences. And really, that was my first toe in the water of house healing, because we would go and try and clear energy and hopefully resolve whatever was going on for those people that lived in the home. It was my first introduction to dowsing, because one of the group was a dowser, and she would use pendulum and rods to, understand what was going on, to find portals, close portals, and whatnot. So that was probably quite a defining moment for me in that I knew that that was the way that I wanted to progress what I was doing. I wanted to help people who were literally terrified of going home or going to sleep. So that was one of the circles I sat in. Another circle I sat in was a direct voice circle, and that was more geared towards physical mediumship. So there's mental mediumship, which I would class myself, where everything kind of happens in the internal world. And then there's physical mediums where it kind of happens externally for everybody to see. So this was a direct voice circle with a view to hearing spirit in the ether and having spirit interact with us in a very physical way. Sadly, not a lot happened in that circle. I sat in that circle for about a year, but I think we probably had two or three mildly exciting things, but that was it really. I don't think our lead medium was a physical medium, and you do need a physical medium to be able to be the battery for that type of activity to happen. But the third circle I sat in was a spirit rescue circle, and that's where I learned the process of spirit rescue, a very specific process that I still use today, but it's a little bit adapted. I will talk about that briefly towards the end. But we would literally sit in circle. We would call in any spirits that needed help, and we would rescue them. And it was, again, that was a defining moment for me, because it's incredibly important work to do in order to help these souls make a full transition into the non-physical side of things. So it was the paranormal investigations, going to people's homes, doing spirit rescue. That was really where I focused my mediumship, and also really enjoyed working. But I learned so much from doing that. And so I'm going to share some of a very small number of experiences, and I've tried to align them to the things that we might experience in house healing. So, the first thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about how that information might come to us. Now, it's great because we've got dowsing as a way in which to tap into all of that. So we've always got that to rely on. And I think the more that we do this work, we also will develop our intuitive abilities, not just with dowsing as well. And so, I say that our sixth sense really is just an extension of all of our five senses. It's a way in which we can receive spiritual, non tangible information to us, and we can do it in the same way that we process information through our five senses. So, for me, the main ways that I do this is clairvoyance. So that's where I get to see, but I don't see like physical beings. I see in my my inner landscape, my inner cinema, if you will. I have seen a few spirits physically with my eyes, but it's few and far between. It's mostly kind of in the little viewing screen inside my mind. And clairsentience, that's another way in which I can bring information in. So that's clear feeling. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of experiences that I had where I really understood what clairsentience is and can be. And it's not just about picking up emotions. I have very limited clairaudient, so that's clear hearing. Occasionally, I've heard things. A couple of months ago, I woke up to somebody talking, which was surprising to me because it's not something that I usually experience. Maybe that aspect of me is turning on, and then of course you can smell. You just get kind of knowing, which is clear cognizance. You can taste, and I think Melanie talked about being able to smell and taste, and so kind of using the fulsome of all of our senses to be able to bring forwards that information, and that's the best place to be because then you get to not lose any aspect of the information that's coming to us. But I do rely on clairvoyance and clairsentience. I also want to talk a little bit about, what we mean. We use different terms like spirits and ghosts, and what are they and what do they mean? And so I can only tell you for me. I'm sure there's lots of different opinions out there, but for me, a ghost is more of a recording. So and that can be kind of like a visual, or it could even be. A noise can be recorded into the fabric of the house, or it could be an emotion. But you hear kind of the white lady goes through the living room, at 12 o'clock on a Monday night. That's going to be a recording, so it isn't that is a anything present there with intelligence. It's more just of a recording. Certainly, it's scary for people to see, but it's more of a recording. Whereas a spirit for me is there's an intelligence, there's an interaction, they're aware of you, and you can have a potential, kind of conversation with them, should they wish that. And then there's a couple of different types of spirits. So there's visiting spirits, so those spirits that just come and pass through, say hi, appear. Might be loved ones, might be friends, might be somebody who just lived in the house, but they just kind of pop in and pop out again. And then you've got the grounded spirits who are stuck more kind of physically focused, and that certainly sounds like Gladys, who was choosing to stay in the location. And that's we get to as house healers really look at is whatever the client experiencing, is it a recording? Is that something that we need to kind of clear energetically, or is there a spirit there? And how do we help the client but also help the spirits? because in my work, I say I've got two clients. I've got the fleshy, the human client, but the spirit is my client as well. So we also need to make sure that we take care of them in the process. And in the middle, there's the poltergeist, which um, is a little bit of what Melanie was describing when she was pregnant, that, PK, psychic kinetic energy that really is, kind of making all of the things around move. It will, lights will flash on and off, things will move. Um, you might hear kind of groans and raps and all sorts of things. So that absolutely could be PK, but spirits can also produce poltergeist type activity as well. And I've definitely experienced all of those. And one of the things that I see in a lot of the poltergeist type hauntings that I've gone to is the more that people are fearful of what is going on, the more the activity happens and ramps up. And so one of the things that I try and do is to kind of bring just the emotion and the energy down so that we can reduce the chaos that is ensuing in the home. And I have had, families that have fled the homes in the middle of the night because of what's happening. Melanie?
Sorry, just to say that with the poltergeist, the ones I've experienced, they've either been with young children, young pubescent children, pregnant women, or with menopausal women. Have you come across that?
Yeah. So, and I've actually trained in parapsychology as well, because I really like to understand all aspects of, what I do. And they would, again, the parapsychologists don't have a defining reason why this happens, but that is certainly one source. There's normally a focus. So it could be, one person, and very often it can happen in chaotic environments anyway. When there's heightened emotions, like, maybe stress in the family, those types of things. Because we're talking about stressed energy, basically, that is, acting out and can move things and can, it literally cause chaos around, and they can be really frightening for people to live with, and really try and understand what is going on. So fear is a really interesting component to my experience of the work anyway, because, as I say, when things are happening in a person's home, maybe, in bed at night, or when your home should be safe. And when people don't feel safe, they get frightened, and it adds to and it feeds what's going on. I had a client who, when he came to me, I did a consultation with him, and it was like poltergeist on steroids that was going on. And in our conversation, he revealed to me that all he did was watch scary movies. And so what I said to him was, take a week off the scary movies, watch things that uplift you, and sing, dance, things that make you happy, do all of that, and then come back to me if you still need my services. And he got in touch with me after a week, and he said everything stopped. And so that fear can create activity. And so very early on, I had the benefit of some amazing medium mentors who helped and supported me. And early on in my journey as a medium, they took me to an old building with a very spooky attic. And they told me to go up there on my own in the dark and to spend a couple of hours there, and try and find out what was there, and talk to the spirits. And it was apparently a very spooky, haunted location, and I was terrified. It was a little bit like an episode of Blair Witch, where I was, in the corner, sniveling, crying, snot coming down my nose, and all of that. because I was really, really, really scared. And so probably about the first hour, sobbed and sniffled, and then it was just like, what's a bit. It was cold. I remember it was very, very cold, but nothing was going on. There wasn't any activity. There wasn't any ghosts. I got a little bit braver. I was trying to reach out, and there was nothing. And after a couple of hours, they came and got me and told me that the house wasn't haunted. In fact, there was nothing there, but they had invented that to prove to me that fear is not your friend in this work. So if I was serious about wanting to do paranormal work and to investigate and to help people, I needed to be able to ensure that I could control my fear in all of that and understand the role that that had, because for the most part, spirits, the worst thing that they can do to you is make you fearful. And when you're fearful, you can, run away screaming and fall down a flight of stairs. So, fear is it has no place in this way. I mean, some healthy, caution is good, but fear, abject fear, doesn't help. So that was a really interesting experience that I had, and I was very cross with my mentors at the time, but I now understand it was a really important journey for me to take. I'm going to talk a little bit about clairsentience and how I understood fully the clairsentience for me. And these are two buildings that I've investigated. This one here is called Plas Teg, and it is in North Wales. It's a Jacobean mansion, and this one's called Stanley Palace, and it's in Chester. And it is, I don't know, from the 1600s, an old black and white kind of Tudor-esque building. And the first experience I had was in Plas Teg. I was there on an investigation, and I was in it was a bedroom. It was on the ground floor. It was there was a big four-poster bed in there, and we were sensing what was kind of present in the location. There was a small group of us, and suddenly I felt like a rope had been placed around my neck, and it was starting to tighten up, and it was getting uncomfortable, and I was starting to cough, and I could see a lady close by, and I was freaked out, definitely hard to kind of breathe and catch my breath, and a little bit of retching. So I left the room, and I was sitting on the stairs, and I was quite upset, and I managed to kind of start breathing again, and my one of my mentors sat with me, and she's was calming me down, and the caretaker came and was asking me what had happened. So I told him, and he said that it was never a bedroom. It had just been staged as a bedroom, but under the bed was the trapdoor, because that was where the circuit judge would come. Judge Jeffries, his name was, Hanging Judge Jeffries. He would go and he would hold the local court there and then meter out justice. And the woman that I'd seen had actually been hung there. And my mentor told me that this is just information. And this is information that I'm picking up with my clairsentient feeling, because it isn't just about, emotions that you can pick up with clairsentience. You can pick up physical feeling as well. And so what I was getting from this person is her story. She was hung. And she wanted me to know that, and she wanted some help around that. So it wasn't that she was. I mean, I thought, I was being hung by a ghost, and they meant me harm. But really, it was just my preference for clairsentience was interpreting the vibration that was coming to me from that spirit. So the spirit wasn't doing anything to me. I'm running that information through my clairsentient preference. And from that time I realized that I was, and I think anybody that's clairsentient can, and actually I think everybody is clairsentient. I think it's a innate natural ability for us, but it isn't just about emotions, it's physical feelings as well. So sometimes you might feel it, as you're tuning into a location, a pain, or you might feel a little bit sick, or you might feel headachy. That's clairsentient abilities coming into the fore. So yes, we might be investigating the home through our dowsing, but we might also be picking things up physically as well. So pay attention to those. The Stanley Palace. I was oh, and by the way, we did manage to transition the lovely hung lady in Plasteg, which was nice. But Stanley Palace, I connected with the local. He was the guy that would the local executioner, and so his way of describing who he was and what he did was he put like a Hessian sack over my head. So there I was in a room, I could see everybody, and then suddenly it went dark and I could smell the very distinct Hessian smell, and I could feel kind of the roughness on my face and on my neck, and that was the way in which he was telling his story. He wasn't trying to execute me; he was just letting me know that he was the town executioner, at the time. So, I don't think without these experiences I would have really fully understood what clairsentience is and can be for us. So, you might be walking down the road and you get a pain in your arm. Always ask, is that my pain or is that somebody else's pain? Because you might be picking up somebody else's. I want to talk a little bit about thought forms, things that we can create as they become sentient beings. They're not spirits, so they're not the spirit of somebody who lived, who has died. They're thought forms, and I came across a couple of these, and I've come across many more since. But this is Dudley Castle, which is in the Midlands, and this is Woodchester Mansion, kind of around the Midlands, Cotswolds, I think. And there were two elementals in there that have been created by humans. So the one in Dudley Castle actually came with somebody who I was investigating with. He had created a thought form, which was for protection. And when I saw him, it was kind of like a gargoyle at the top and a bit snaky at the bottom. And he was kind of sliding and slipping around. And when I mentioned that I'd seen this, he was able to say, "Oh, that's my elemental, and I've created him, and he's there for my protection." And that was the first time I'd ever physically seen a thought form manifested. And these are things that you might see, as your house healing. There might be something that has been created that is animate, can move around, can think for itself. It was the same in Woodchester Mansion. The only thing I saw was red eyes when I was at Woodchester Mansion. But again, this is somebody has created this thought form. Now, the one in Dudley Castle had been created by intent. The one at Woodchester Mansion, I think, had just been created from the emotion that had been left in the building. It became a sentient being that could move about, no emotion, not like a human intelligence, but there was certainly will, free will there. And so when we look at emotional black spots in our house healing, if left, that black spot can be fed through, the emotional response that it gets from the humans living in the home. It'll just feed it. It'll go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to the point that it then detaches from where it is and can move around the property freely and can create poltergeist activities as well. And if you don't believe me, check out Philip the Ghost. This was a group in Canada in the east, and they were a parapsychology group, and they decided to create a ghost. And Melanie.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, John. Sorry.
That's okay. No, go on.
No, I was just going to say the first group I belonged to, the parasitic group, was called Casper. You would have heard of Casper the Ghost they invented as well, would you not?
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually literally they invented a ghost as a joke, and it became real. So they invented alcohol.
Yeah, and so they decide this group decided they were going to create see if they could create a ghost. So they created this life of Philip, and they talked about him, wrote about him, all of the experiences they literally created, and that ghost started to interact with them. They would talk to them, move things, but the only thing that Philip the Ghost would speak about would be the experiences that they had created. It wasn't able to, kind of manifest other thoughts and ideas about itself. So it was constrained by what this group had created for it. So we know that that is possible. So that's something to think about as we're house healing, and how important it is to clear those, kind of emotional black spots, but also to understand if somebody's having a paranormal activity in their home, is it spirits, or is it something that's been manifested by them maybe, or by previous occupants as well? So these are nuanced questions that we can ask in our house healing through our dowsing or our intuition as well. This is a little bit about spirit guides, because I do think that we can bring a group of energies together to help us in this work. And so my main guide that I work with for this type of work, his name is Septimus, and he is a Roman soldier, and he has been with me right from the start. And when he first came to me, he told me he was my gatekeeper. And so he was there to, I'm going to say, like a psychic bouncer. So he was there to help me to manage the doorway between spirit communication and me. And he is a very tall man. He's been seen on many occasions as a big shadow looming over me. I remember at one location, somebody came to me and said, "I don't want to worry you, but there's a huge, black shadow behind you." And I'm like, "It's okay, it's just Septimus." And what's really funny is that he stands with his back to my back, which I always thought was weird, until I realized that it's almost like he's got my back. He's looking, behind me where I can't see. So I always feel very protected and good when he is around. And he has definitely evolved into, more than just kind of a psychic bouncer, but he also helps me a lot with spirit rescue as well. So I don't know if you've come across the terminology of psychopomp. So sometimes he will be at the conduit to help kind of, spirit transition as well. And the other individual, I guess, that I work with is I do work with Archangel Michael on occasion. And I'm not religious. I was brought up Catholic, but I was very I turned away from that very, very young. I have a very Catholic family. Um, and so that didn't go down very well. But I turned away from the concept of angels as well. I just, I always attach them to the Catholic faith, or certainly to Christianity. And so I didn't want to have anything to do with them, but they wanted something to do with me. And so I kept getting references to angels, and I was stubborn and adamant that I didn't want anything to do with them. And then I was in a bookshop in the UK, and I'm in the metaphysical section, as I always am. And there was a chap just across the way. He was perusing whatever, and I'm looking, and then literally by the side of me, this book just comes out on its own and falls on the floor. And he kind of looks at me, I look at him, and he kind of rushes away. And so I pick the book up, and it's a book on angels. So I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm going to have to buy this one and see what it's all about. So anyway, I bought a couple of books, this one included, went back to the car. I was waiting for my daughter. She was doing some shopping. And so I thought, oh, I'll just, I'll sit and read one of my books. I was adamant that I wasn't going to be the angel book. Turned the radio on, and Robbie Williams' Angels is playing on the radio. So I'm like, okay, maybe I need to pay attention to this. And I did, and realized that they are, not owned by any faith at all. That they are definitely a higher being that can help us should we need it. And the one that I work with the most would be Archangel Michael. I have asked for his help on a number of occasions, and he saved my bacon on a number of occasions. But that would be for another Zoom. On those, but really in this work, do connect with your guides, your helpers, however, or whether they're gods, goddesses, or spirit guides, or angels. It doesn't really matter. And in some ways, I think they're all aspects of the same energy, just with a different lens that we run it through. But they're so helpful to help us with this work. I certainly wouldn't be the person I am now without their help. And then this is probably the most frightened I've been in an investigation. That's one thing that people ask me all the time, is when is the most frightened. And Melanie, said in her presentation that, for the most part, spirits are, they are benign, but there are some that are darker. Now, I don't necessarily ascribe to, kind of the demonic label, but, I have encountered spirits that, haven't had my best interests at heart, or might be mad, or grumpy at best, but just angry and not in a good place. And so we might encounter those types of spirit. They're not all pink and fluffy, as I say. So this is probably the most frightened that I've been in on a location. It's called the Galleries of Justice. It's in Nottingham. It is a place of justice execution. This is kind of a courtroom, and then some of the older parts of the building are cells. And Nottingham is built on top of lots of tunnels and caverns. And so you can access those all over the city, but there's an access point underneath the Galleries of Justice. And this is the room that I was in. I had a group, we were leading a seance. It was completely pitch black, dark, and we were in a circle, and you literally couldn't see a hand in front of your face, and yet we could see dark figures or shadows surrounding us as a circle. And so that was a little bit discombobulating. It felt very claustrophobic. I mean, it's claustrophobic anyway. It's a bit of a cave, but then it felt more claustrophobic as they arrived. And they were kind of moving and shifting. And then we started to have stones thrown. So there was stones being thrown, and not just small stones, but kind of big, chunky rocks. And everybody was frightened. And at that point, this has never happened to me before. It's never happened to me since. But my psychic vision was turned on like in night vision. Right when you see, those kind of ghost hunting shows where it's all in green, because the night vision's on. My psychic vision turned into night vision, and literally physically with my eyes were open and I could see everything that was there. I could see the circle of people, and I could see hooded individuals around the circle as well. And that gave me the clue that really isn't a place that we should have been. And so I closed the circle down and we all left, thank goodness. But I firmly believe that, my guides switched that ability on so that I could see what was actually there and do something about it rather than, I don't know, get knocked out by a stone. I don't know, but they were certainly did not have our best interests at heart. So that was a really cool experience. It's never happened before since. But it's nice to know that sometimes when we need it, even when we think we don't need help, that help is there for us. Psychometry. I'm going to talk a little bit about haunted objects because we do in our house healing ask around power objects. And so, power objects, are things that have an energy to them that are, affecting the energy of the space. Now, that could be, lovely and positive and nice, but it also could be something that is not as positive. And psychometry is a practice that I learned very, very early on in my mediumship. It definitely lends itself to clairsentience, and it's where you pick up an object or you touch an object and you pull in the psychic impressions. And so some of it is psychic information, so it's just that information of people that have interacted with the object or touched the object or owned the object, and sometimes it becomes into kind of the spirit connected to that object. So haunted objects. And I have had and probably will continue to have many haunted objects pass through my hands. They often get given to me because somebody can't deal with what is going on and want to get rid of it. I have many stories about those, but a couple of really odd things that I've psychometrized. This picture in the middle is a location in Manchester that I went to, and I was asked to psychometrize the fireplace, huge big fireplace. Again, it's another building from the 1600s. Huge big fireplace. I was in a room, touched this fireplace, and then suddenly the whole room changed to one of it was the English Civil War, so the Royalists. I could see men in uniform walking around. There was a desk. There was a man behind the desk, and he was signing, papers. There was a lot of hustle and bustle. So it was very different than the room that I was standing in before I touched the fireplace. And so when I stopped, and the room went back to what it was, and then I found out that the person who had owned the house, that built the house, was actually a royalist. He was a general in the royalist army, and it was a little bit of a hub and headquarters for that. And so through touching the fireplace, you were able to tap into that period of time that had obviously was quite an emotional period of time that just kind of locked itself in the memory bank of that fireplace. So these objects can be really, really powerful. So, in our house healing, we might identify an object and not realize just how much impact it's having on the environment because of that. And then here, this is a rookie mistake that I made maybe about 10 years ago. This is a reprint of a painting by Klimt. It's his Mistress. I love the painting. I bought it in an estate sale. Can you see where I'm going with this? And a spirit came home with it. So Gloria was an old English woman attached to this painting that remains with the painting to this day. She has no intention of being helped over to the other side. She makes her presence known. She will move things. She will hiss. She will make people feel uncomfortable. I've had to put her outside on many occasions. She loves my husband. And my husband doesn't do any of this at all, but he has had to endure lots of things living with me over the last 30 years. But she loves him, and so she will rake her fingernails on his feet and stand by him and make him feel very uncomfortable. But she puts up with me. She hates my daughter, but that's so I can't really move her on. I can't give the painting away because, well, at least I know how to deal with Gloria. So yeah, we share our accommodation together, Gloria and I. So be careful going to these wonderful, estate sales, auctions, and secondhand stores because you might bring something home with you. Rookie mistake. Again, I know house healing. I'm going to say that chaotic environments create chaos and can create spirit type of haunting. So a chaotic environment like this can create poltergeist type activity. But I had a really fun case, whereas I was called in, there was a spirit there. It was a hoarder's house. So there was just like piles of newspaper everywhere. And there was like one little pathway through all of the different rooms. There wasn't anywhere to sit down. It was just a crazy place. And found a spirit in there who had wandered in, got lost, couldn't find his way out, absolutely desperate to leave, but was stuck in the mire of mess that was there. So he was very, very relieved to be found and to be rescued. So again, as house healers, what does the environment look like? Because that also could be part of the problem that you're trying to solve. Now, again, as remote house healers, we may not get to see that. But if you do house calls, you will be able to see that. And, I have, there are interesting conversations to have with clients about, asking them to tidy up, because that is actually at the basis of what is going on for them. And then finally, I don't even know what time it is. Finally, just spirit rescue. It is a big part of what I do, will continue to do for forever until I, shuttle off this mortal coil. For me, it is it's a sacred process. It is always done with spirit's agreement. And like Melanie, there has been a small amount of times where I've forced a spirit out, but you're sending it to another place to be, a nuisance at best, maybe even worse. So it isn't, spirit rescue for me is something that's done with the agreement of, spirit. It is something that we do together, and really at the basis of spirit rescue. And again, this is just how I've been trained and what I've come to know and understand about the process. Is what's holding somebody more physically focused is a vibrational, a frequency misalignment. because when you transition from physical to non-physical, you're changing frequency. But for some spirits, their frequency is more dialed into more of a physical frequency than a non-physical frequency, and that could be because they suffered in life. It could be because they, passed over really quickly. Some spirits don't even know that they've died, and I have dealt with many spirits that don't know that they have actually made their transition. So that's been a wonderful conversation to have with them. Maybe they're angry, maybe the just love something or someone so much that they don't want to leave. So it's a frequency misalignment with the other side, if you want to use that language. So the job of a spirit rescue medium is to help that spirit shift their frequency. And the best way to do that is with love. So how do you get them into a better feeling emotional state so that their frequency is one that they can actually even perceive the doorway, if you will, that they go through. I am conscious of time, so I'm going to stop there. But a big conversation around spirit rescue there. So, questions, thoughts, comments? I don't want to keep you all. Nancy?
Yeah, so I just want to go back to when you were talking about the client with the poltergeist that was watching scary movies. Um, so when he stopped and the activity stopped, was there a spirit there or was there not a spirit there? So what was, I'm not clear what that was all about then.
Like it's just fear energy in the environment.
Created all the
Created
hocus pocus stuff.
literally things were moving, things were being thrown. It was, but there wasn't a spirit behind that. It's like, when Melanie was pregnant, there wasn't a spirit haunting her. It was the psychic energy that was being produced because of that event that was happening for Melanie, that was, moving things, creating the chaos.
More powerful than we realize as human beings.
Were you scared, Melanie? I mean, other than that one landing.
I was
So
annoyed. I got very, very annoyed. It used to happen all the time. It used to really annoy me. It was embarrassing more than anything because it made me feel as if I was just clumsy because people wouldn't see always. And I wasn't anywhere near something and would leap off and I'd say, I'm so sorry, I've just broken your vase. It was just embarrassing more often. But we can do
it was
amazing.
more,
Sorry.
it was more about your annoyance energy than fear that created all the chaos.
Well, no,
It's
no.
So
The chaos was the house was almost like it happened mostly in my house, my flat. It happened occasionally other places, but mostly in the house. It was like small things would fly across the room, and you think, well, I was nowhere near that. That wasn't me, but it was the energy of that. A bit like with poltergeists with children or with pregnant women, or with it's almost you're changing your frequency, as Dawn was just saying, aren't you? We change our frequency, and that's when things happen. And some people can get annoyed and cause PK without actually realizing it. Some people can get
okay.
scared and do it. It's us. We're amazingly powerful beings. We just don't realize it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Tracy was saying she had some, didn't you, when you were training in mediumship? You put here in the chat, Tracy.
Yeah. When I opened up psychic, because I was doing mediumship training at that time, plus I did the healing. I was doing Reiki as well, and I had teenage boys in the house, and we had a lot of PK energy, and I had to learn to clear it. It wasn't frightening in any way, but the doorbell would ring when people were going on and off the drive. The boys were in the room and coins would fly off the windowsill. Then I had a spirit that moved up in the attic and he had to get cleared. I was mopping my floors and bumping into people, and so I think it was spirit's way of, or the management's way of getting me to work with spirit to move them on. And also with what I call residual energy as well. So when my son moved into a terraced house nearby, every Christmas things would kick off in the kitchen. So the bin would bang and things would happen, and there were knocks and bangs. But that was what I call residual energy. So that was an energy that had built up in the past from something like an argument or a violent episode, and it was left in the ether. And sometimes these things act as a conduit. It's what I call a conduit for these activities, if that makes sense.
And a
So,
birthday
yeah.
somewhere, isn't
So
it?
when
A
we,
birthday.
when we think
Yeah.
about sealing, and we might get a client that's coming to us because they think that there's a spirit there, there's things that are going on for them. I just hold in your thoughts that they may be having that activity, but it may not be a spirit. It might be to do with residual energy or emotional black spot, this stuff that's been left, to fester and to manifest, even to grow and to build. Or it might be a spirit, but you don't always automatically assume that it is, because there's so many different aspects to that. So
Absolutely.
hopefully you've enjoyed, Melanie, and my sharing of our experiences. This is the tip of the iceberg of the things that I've experienced. I'm sure that's the same for Melanie as well. I'm actually in the throes of writing a book because I don't want to forget some of the things that I've experienced, because it's been a wild ride.
Look forward to reading that, Dawn.
Poking me on it, and I'll keep writing it.
I'll keep poking. Did you get your book, by the way?
Not yet, but thank you.
Hopefully I'll do it soon.
I only go to the mailbox a couple of times a week. So,
Well, this has been really interesting.
Putting up with us. We are our November session is a Q&A, so bring your questions, bring your where you're at in your business. It'll be an open forum. Looking forward to that. And in December we have an EMF expert to come and talk about man-wave frequencies, and that will be our year done. So have a great rest of the day or evening and month until we see you again. So thank you all.
Thank
Thank you
you
very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.